This is a space robot boy, but in black. My name is Brent. This is Groundeffected. Somebody is your dad. And welcome to Slipping in the Bar. Now you may have noticed that in a couple of videos, as of late, I've been painting space robot men. These are little men that are made of plastic, which grown adults play with. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I paint one of them again, but this time I'm going to paint him in the black color scheme. Some would say these are the monk bros of space. Others would say they're probably called Black Templars. Make sure to leave a like on the video, leave some words in the little box that YouTube gives you to leave some words, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Like I always say, for every one more subscriber that I get, I will have one more new subscriber. And let's just get straight into painting this black monk boy bro robot man for adults to play with. So these dudes are a little bit different to the ultramarine dudes that I've previously done in videos that you may or may not have watched of mine in the past. In this case of this guy, he is a Black Templar, and I could not find for the life of me the original blade champion that I needed to make this model. But I felt like I could still make this model out of just a standard ultramarine, space marine captain guy that I found within my Warhammer shop. So in order to make him more Black Templars like, I messaged one of my pals and I asked him, bruh, does this thing look like a Black Templar? And he said, dude, you need a picnic blanket for him to carry around his waist. And I said, bruh, you making the most sense I've ever heard. I am going to henceforth make a picnic blanket for my monk bro. And so I started with a load of green stuff. Green stuff is a kind of epoxy putty that you can put together two parts, which you have time to actually work with and sculpt and mold it before it hardens. It doesn't harden to rock hard. It is not a sandable surface, as well as, say, for example, milliput, but you can use it to mold things like, for example, the picnic blanket that's going around my monk bro's waist. Now, of course, if you don't know much about Space Marines, a lot of the times I've been told within the comments of my videos that these guys like to clean themselves a lot. And so this is why you will see a lot of Space Marines with picnic blankets around their waist. This is in order to help them clean their armor during a day's hard work at battle. Also, sometimes they like to have picnics with each other, and that will be the time when they will use the blanket to protect their bums from becoming dirty when they sit on the dirty battle floor of their battlegrounds. Now, for a Space Marine that is of the Black Templars type, you would need to have a black armor, and this is going to be something super difficult. If you have no idea what you're doing, you probably would just paint in black and say job done, which is pretty much what I did. But there are a couple of details. For example, his pauldrons are this kind of creamy ivory sort of color. So in order to create that, I'm going to spray an ink first. This is going to create the shapes and the shadows that I need for that nice round smooth pauldron look. I'm then going to use a wash, and I'm going to airbrush that from the bottom in the shadowed areas, which will then kind of smooth out the gradient between the blacks and the whites and help to create that ivory look. I'm then going to add the transfer sheet that I had originally found on eBay, just because I didn't actually have any Black Templars. So I found a transfer sheet that had the Templar symbol on it, and I cut them out and stuck them on the pauldrons. I used decal set to make this job a whole lot easier than what it would be without it. Once I'd got them set in place and it had dried, I airbrushed a clear matte medium over the top of it. This is going to seal them in for the next steps that I'm going to be doing down the line. For the gun, I just dry brushed a load of shining silver over the top. This is to create that metallic look. Now for the next step, I'm going to need to block up those pauldrons so that I don't damage the work that I'd already done by doing the steps after this. As I'd said, these are black armored men, and unfortunately black is not the easiest thing to paint, especially if you want it to read as black and not anything else. So in order to read as black, I'm going to give it a slight grayish highlight. The gray in this case has a slight bluish hue to it, and this I'm going to spray from the top or in a zenithal kind of fashion. This is just going to create a little bit more depth in the black, so it's not just one solid black. Once everything had dried, I'm going to then unmask everything that I'd originally masked and go back in and kind of darken up certain things. For example, his aquila on his chest, because I want that to be pitch black before I start the next steps on that. In order to create a little bit more depth in the model, I'm going to make a nice oil wash. This is something I've gone over in previous videos, and there is hundreds of videos about this on the YouTube that you could go and look up if you don't know what I'm talking about here. Basically, you mix some liquid stuff with some oily stuff, you make some black stuff, and you then splat said black stuff. In order to make the splatting of the black stuff a little bit easier, I like to spray a clear varnish over the top of the model first. Don't make this layer too thick because you will fill up the details, and this will not make it easy for you to fill in with the wash later. Once I had done the wash and allowed it to dry, I gave it a matte clear coat again, and then I went in to start working on some of the details. In this case, the details for this model would be the tabard that goes around his waist, picnic blanket that he has around his waist, and a lot of like small details, for example, going back in and tidying up the pauldron, the edge of the pauldron, and putting in like the little gun holsters and the pouches and all the little boxes that he has around his waist. Honestly, sometimes I think Warhammer has probably got the same problem as what Marvel has with the amount of pouches that they place on their characters. I don't know if you were ever in battle and you tried to fight someone with this amount of pouches. I can tell you now, it's not going to be easy, and this is probably the reason why they are superhuman men, because the only reason is so that they can carry this amount of pouches. Once all those little nitty bitty things had dried, I went back in and shaded some of them. This is not my normal go-to method of painting things, but for miniatures and things of this kind of nature, sometimes you can lean on certain techniques that are in most cases a little bit dirty looking, but you can use this to your advantage on a small model like this, because a lot of the brush strokes won't be as visible as they would be, say for example, on a quarter scale statue. So you can kind of cheat a little bit, and one of the ways I cheat in this model is by using black as the base and working up. I can use a slightly drier brush as opposed to a very wet brush. This way I can just touch details and it will leave a tiny bit of the paint on that detail at the same time as leaving a little bit of black in the background, or essentially outlining the piece that I'm then shaping. In order to create the actual shine on the suit and make it look like it is an armor that this person is wearing, I'm going to need to create some kind of edge highlight. Usually I'd use a bright white because I'm crazy and I like to irritate people that like the Warhammers, but in this case bright white perhaps is not going to work so much. It will definitely desaturate the piece way too far. So I added a little bit of blue into this kind of parchment color. It is very close to white, but it's not white, and it definitely brings in some of the color into the piece. This creates the edge highlight. It makes the armor look nice and shiny, but without desaturating it. For the base, I'm going to use the same stuff I used on my Ultramarines base, mainly because this is all that I have available. I don't have any other stuff, so everybody gets a nice Martian base. That's the way it's going to work. That will be the way it will be forevermore. In order to make this base not look like my Ultramarines base though, I'm going to use a bit more red in the wash for this one. So this will create a little bit more of a vibrant base, a little bit more reddish looking and a little bit less dusty looking. In order to do a couple little touch-ups, like for example on the candles, the best thing I can say for that is use fluorescent colors for this. It will make it stand out, it will make it more vibrant, and it will definitely sell the effect that these things are illuminated. I went through and I touched up a couple things like the purity seals and added a couple white edges on those pieces, and that's where I called the model done. Hopefully you managed to pick out something from this video that may help you painting your little space robot men in the future. Of course, this is not a massive statue like I usually paint, but there are certainly techniques you can take out of this video and apply them to larger models if you really wanted to. And if you didn't want to, you probably want to follow the instructions I'll leave in the last few seconds of the video. It's at this point that I would like to say a massive thank you to my Patreons. Because of you guys, I'm able to keep these lights blinding my eyeballs and perhaps sometimes feed my kids. Also, if you want to make sure to support the channel, the best thing you can do is watch another video. If you want to be part of the community over on Discord, then you need to join the Patreon. That is a link you can find in my description. None of this video is going to make sense. I don't know what I'm doing on the internet. Also, if you didn't like anything you saw, the best thing you can do for yourself, just click the dislike button and then please f*** off. Why is it that sometimes a video makes sense and others it just doesn't make any sense? I don't get it.